Let's make a video about Halloween. So I didn't really know what to do for this video, so in the end what I did is I went and read the Wikipedia article about Halloween in Spanish and I translated it into English. I think I've done a very good job. So let's get started. Let's read about the history of Halloween. This is going to be so interesting. So Halloween is basically the name that we give to the modern celebration, which is a bit of a syncretism of a lot of different traditions. Basically, though, it's just the Christianisation of an old Celtic tradition known as Samhain, which was a kind of feast that the Celts had at the end of summer to celebrate the end of summer, basically, the beginning of the dark period. The short version of the story is that basically it became very popular in the United States in the early 20th century and then kind of expanded throughout the Anglo-sphere, throughout the English-speaking world, and has eventually gone to other countries as well, where I'm living now, Spain, and I know Latin America. They seem to celebrate Halloween in a very sort of American, very English sort of way. There are exceptions, however, even in the Anglo-sphere, even in the English-speaking world. There are countries that speak English, like Australia and New Zealand, mainly countries in the southern hemisphere that haven't really adopted this tradition of celebrating Halloween, probably because, because they're in the southern hemisphere. They're not celebrating the beginning of the dark period. In fact, they're going into summer at the end of October and the beginning of November. It's the end of autumn for us, but it's kind of like the end of spring, beginning of summer for them. So that probably explains it. We have only just begun and this video is already getting boring. Lightning! Lightning! That'll make the video better. Visual effects. We need more visuals. So just recapping what I was saying, although today it's seen as kind of like a secular, non-religious kind of celebration, its roots seem to come from this kind of pagan, Samhain, Celtic tradition, a mixture of that and the Christian All Saints' Day on November the 1st. It seems that if you go back through history, it's quite deliberate that they celebrate them at the same time. But basically, modern Halloween as we know it today seems to have come over to North America with the massive Irish immigration, hence the way we can trace it back to Celtic roots. It seems that Irish immigrants brought across their version of this tradition, this version of Samhain, this version of what came to be known as Halloween. They brought that over with them during the Great Irish Famine, or the Potato Famine as it's sometimes known. So that was in the mid-19th century, between 1845 and 1849, where we seem to be able to trace the first instances, the first celebrations of Halloween in North America. I guess the other obvious things that we already know about Halloween are the sort of symbols, the symbology that's related to this celebration, the pumpkins, the jack-o'-lanterns, and the activities, going to do trick-or-treat and going to costume parties, dressing up, trying to do sort of scary activities, visiting haunted houses and watching horror movies, things like that. It seems that even all of these things go back further than the 20th century, from way back before then, back to the Middle Ages. Let's have a look at where it all comes from. We'll start with just the name, Halloween. Where the hell does that come from? More lightning! That's better.
The name Halloween. The word Halloween is traditionally defined as a shortened form in the Scottish language of the English expression All Hallow Even, used as such for the first time in the 16th century. In the form of Halloween, it has been attested since 1745. All Hallows Even, or also All Hallows Eve, was the Old English name for the Eve of All Saints, that is, the eve of the Christian holiday of November 1st.
Yeah, but what does all that mean? What is Hallow and what is Eve and what's all that? Well, I'm going to explain that now, so just shut up and, listen. Continue watching the video.
Hallow is an Old English word, now in disuse, to refer to the saints. coming from the Anglo-Saxon haliga, which means holy, sanctify, or consecrate. In turn, even or eve refers to the final part of the day, that is, on the eve of the next day. It is also the name given in English to the vigils of liturgical feasts in Christianity.
So basically it means something like holy night or something like that. It's not very clear, because I've heard that hallow used to mean saint as well, so it's like the night of the saints as well. I don't know. I think half of the people are just making it Haliga. Where the hell did Haliga come from? You know? I don't know.
Celtic origin. Halloween, according to traditional theory, has its origin in a Celtic holiday known as Samhain, a term derived from ancient Irish, meaning the end of summer. The ancient Britons had a similar holiday known as Caelan Gaith. In Samhain, the end of the summer harvest season was celebrated in the Celtic culture and was considered the Celtic New Year, which began with the dark season. The ancient Celts believed that the line that unites this world with the other world narrowed with the arrival of Samhain, allowing spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, to pass through. Family ancestors were invited and honoured, while harmful spirits were removed. It is believed that the use of suits and masks is due to the need to scare away evil spirits. Its purpose was to adopt the appearance of an evil spirit to avoid being harmed.
So there you go, like the Celts were dressing up and trying to make themselves look really scary. I don't know if they're using jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins or what they were doing. But the idea was to try and look as scary as you could, to try and scare away all these evil spirits that might try to hurt you in some way. So I guess that's kind of what we still do now, isn't it? More or less, we try and be as scary. Well, not everyone tries to be scary, but basically that's the main idea. We do scary things now in Halloween. Yeah.
Another common practice was fortune telling, which often involved the consumption of food and beverages. In Asturias, banquets were held in the tombs of ancestors.
And Asturias, that's where I live, and that genuinely comes up in the Wikipedia article, in Spanish at least, that they used to have feasts, they used to go and have meals in the tombs of their ancestors. I need to look into that a little bit, but I'm not sure there's any footage of that happening. God knows how they know that.
Roman tradition. When the Roman occupation of the Celtic domains took place, the Romans assimilated the holiday. Although a holiday known as the Harvest Festival was already celebrated in the last days of October and the 1st of November in honor of Pomona, goddess of fruit trees, both traditions were mixed.
So as is often happens in history, we have a dominant culture like the Roman Empire that comes into an area, in this case, a place where Celts live, and instead of just destroying their culture completely, they've tried to find how they can assimilate elements of the Celtic culture, adapt it to theirs, and make it so that, well, they're not too uncomfortable adapting to Roman life, and the Romans can sort of go, well, you know, they're not that heretic, they're kind of similar to us, let's all just live in harmony. I'm sure it was lovely.
Christian tradition. Since the time of the early church, important Christian celebrations such as Christmas, Easter and the Pentecost have had vigils that begin the night before, as does the Feast of All Saints. While Christmas, Easter or the Pentecost could have a related day, the death of the believers happened throughout the year, and so there was no fixed day, meaning that the commemorations of all the saints and martyrs were celebrated by several churches on different dates, mainly in the spring. In 609 AD, Pope Boniface IV rededicated the Pantheon in Rome to Saint Mary and all the martyrs on May 13th, taking advantage of the Feast of Lemuria, an ancient Roman festival of the dead.
So yet more like ambiguity, and it just becomes less clear the more you look at history. So here you've got a very deliberate action by a pope who's trying to get Catholic and Roman culture to live happily together and take advantage of elements of the Roman culture, the traditional Roman culture, and adapt it to the Catholic culture. And then in turn they've tried to do the same thing with the Celts, it seems. So, yeah, it's all a bit confusing, but at the same time, kind of all makes sense.
Feast of All Saints, in its current date in the Western Church, dates back to the foundation by Pope Gregory III, 731 to 741 AD, of an oratory in St. Peter for the relics of the holy apostles and all saints, martyrs and confessors. In 835 AD, All Saints was officially changed from May 13th to November the 1st, the same date as Samhain, at the request of Pope Gregory IV. Some suggest that this was due to the Celtic influence, while for others it was a Germanic idea. In any case, both the Germanic peoples and those of Celtic culture commemorated the dead in early winter, probably because they observed that it was a time to die in nature.
So again, just more logic, like even at the time, it doesn't seem clear whether the Romans were changing these dates to bow to Germanic or Celtic wishes, but it seemed like everyone had a feeling that there needed to be a celebration around this time to celebrate the dark period, the coming of the dark period, the end of the summer harvest, a time to celebrate the dead, to celebrate your ancestors, to celebrate martyrs, to recognize something like a moment of unity between the living world and the other world. Fantastic.
It is also suggested that the change was made for practical reasons, that Rome in summer could not accommodate the large number of pilgrims who came to it, and perhaps due to public health considerations related to Roman fever, a disease that claimed several lives during the sultry summers of that region.
So maybe it was just overbooking of celebrations. There was too much. It's like the World Cup in Qatar. It's going to be too hot there. It's just going to be mental. For practical reasons, we're going to have to play in the winter. And it looks like something else, here related to that. The weather influenced maybe their decision a little bit. It just seems like for many, many practical reasons, they kind of invented this Halloween Day or this All Saints Day, and we've kept it going. That's what I'm getting from this.
Expansion to North America and popularization. Circa 1840, this holiday arrived in the United States and Canada, where it became highly popular. Irish immigrants acted out versions of the tradition during the Great Irish Famine. It was they who spread the custom of carving the jack-o'-lantern, inspired by the legend of Stingy Jack.
Yeah, if you want to have a look at Stingy Jack, that's something you can look at in your own time. I don't have enough time to tell you about Stingy Jack. I'll just tell you what stingy means. It means tacaño, and that's if you're Spanish and you're listening to this. So that might not be useful. Anyway.
However, the party did not begin to be widely celebrated until 1921. That year, the first Halloween parade was held in Minnesota, and then followed by other states. The party gradually gained popularity in the following decades. The internationalization of Halloween began in the late 1970s and early 1980s thanks to cinema and television series. In 1979, the film Halloween by John Carpenter was released in cinemas around the world and went on to become a classic horror B-movie.
I think trying to find an exact moment when Halloween sort of became an international thing is quite difficult. They're trying to associate it here with the release of the film Halloween, but I guess it's kind of like everything, American and English culture, English-speaking culture has kind of dominated everything over the last sort of 50 years. So I guess Halloween was just another one of those things that was always going to catch on, and it's very commercial. Businesses can really push that on people. You start putting jack-o'-lanterns in the shops, and the kids will go, "I like the film." Anyway, that's how marketing works.
Halloween in Spain. The expansion of American culture throughout the world, mainly through cinema, led to the inevitable arrival of Halloween in Spain.
It was inevitable. Even Spain was going to start celebrating Halloween, that backward country.
However, it seems that many similar traditions derived from the Samhain were already observed in the Iberian Peninsula even before the United States existed as a nation.
I love all of these things, it's always, you always have to be the first. No, in fact, it was my country who invented cheese. All apples are actually from Kazakhstan. I've read things like that in books. That's actually a real fact I read in a book. Like, I don't know if it's some genetic fossil thing that they've looked into and all apples are from Kazakhstan, but anyway, this is actually quite interesting. It does turn out that Spain or Spanish culture or people living in the Iberian Peninsula have always, or to some extent, some parts of the country have celebrated things that look really similar to modern day Halloween.
Due to its Celtic origin, in Spain there are a considerable number of traditions related to spirits, probably the most famous being the Meigas and the Santa Compaña in Galicia. In Asturias in the 18th century, children carried lamps and asked for food at the doors of houses during the night of October 31st. In what is now the community of Madrid, there are numerous municipalities registered such as Ambite, Canencia, El Vellón, Estremera, Manzanares el Real, Loeches, Fuentidueña de Tajo, in which the houses were decorated with pumpkins, in which holes were made to simulate a face with eyes, nose and mouth, and a candle or light was placed inside the pumpkin with the aim of invoking protective spirits and scaring people by creating an atmosphere of terror.
I thought that was pretty crazy, yeah, that they actually made pumpkins. They actually made jack-o'-lanterns in Spain. This was like hundreds of years ago. So yeah, it does seem like it's a European thing that went to North America, became massive, and then came back to Europe in a bigger way, I guess, in a more sort of neatly packaged, marketable Halloween thing rather than Samhain. Who was going to celebrate Samhain?
Pumpkins were used to make these decorations, although they were also made with courgettes, clay pitchers or cooking pots. In Ajalbir, instead of a pumpkin, an ass's skull was used. It was a very common practice for many people in Madrid to ring a bell throughout the night until dawn, and on many occasions people would dress in black. Lights were taken to the cemeteries to guide the dead, and tombs were cleaned. On the outskirts of Soria, Castilla y León, a very famous procession called Ritual de las Ánimas is celebrated, in which people sing at night while they carry candles in their hands, protected by bottles, pumpkins or mud pots, to a bonfire. This tradition was immortalized by Gustavo Adolfo Becker in his story El Monte de las Ánimas, Soul's Mount, in 1862.
So there you have it. There's the story of Halloween, and yeah, I think I don't think you'll find a better one anywhere. You know, there's a couple of National Geographic documentaries on YouTube that I found, and they were not as good as my video. I don't think they were as well explained. You know, so don't look at them. Just share my video, like my video, watch my video, all my videos to the end, and share, and did I say like, and yeah,